Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. Are you looking to better your financial situation by increasing your cash flow? Too busy to hunt for real estate deals or don't know where to start? Then you're in the right spot. Join us as we dive in and talk about investing for cash flow using multifamily real estate.
Welcome to the Cashflow Project podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fioros with Tri-City Equity Group. Today, pretty excited. We have Michael Elefante on the show. Michael is a founder of B&B Investor Academy, which teaches investors how to find financial freedom through operating successful short-term rentals. The program coaches people how to find, invest, set up, and manage short-term rental properties. Within 3 years, he was personally able to scale his portfolio to generating well over $1 million of revenue. And he's here to show us, for one, how he did it, how he went vertical with other businesses that all support short-term rentals, short-term rental operators, and investors in this space. Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, appreciate having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on with us. I always love diving into short-term rentals and obviously anything that we can do to generate more increased revenue, increased returns, especially when compared to, let's say, long-term rental space. And a lot of people who invest into residential typically get started in long-term rentals. Hey, it's kind of a safe play. I feel like now more than ever, though, it's like you need kind of those outsized returns, right? The juiced returns that you can get from short-term rentals. Obviously, you get some financial flexibility for one, but of course it's a lifestyle asset too. So, but kind of before we dive into kind of some of the, maybe the more technical aspects of it, tell us a little bit about your backstory for our listeners that may not be familiar with you and kind of what you've got going on there. How did you get started in real estate? Give us some backstory on how you got going.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in North Carolina. I was a college athlete, went to university, small school, played baseball there. I was hoping to play professionally. That did not pan out. So when you wake up, and if you've ever done a sport or music, whatever it is that you had a passion about as a kid or an adolescent, once that dream comes to a screaming halt, you kind of have to pivot and like rethink what your priorities are. Because I woke up and that was my primary focus, like 7 days a week for the better sum of 20 years. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go get a good job. That's what everyone does after college, right? So got an entry-level sales position at a tech company. And I literally got sat down at a great cubicle and they're like, here's a phone, here's a list, go make some calls. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm calling about. I don't know what product I'm selling or trying to set up meetings for. It was horrible. That was like my rude first taste of corporate America. And I just remember like for the first time ever, I was driving home from work and I just felt numb. And I'm like, I don't think I'm depressed. There's nothing that's like getting me excited each day. And I just like, I guess that's like the hamster wheel, the rat race. Like I wake up not excited, go to the same task, and then I drive home and have that same feeling sitting in traffic. And I'm like, it's got to be a better way. So I was like, well, maybe if I get promoted, make more money, I could afford better things. I could actually enjoy this time. I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. I had literally saving like $200 a month. Like that's not even enough to go out to dinner in Dallas and like really have a good night. So I was like, man, if I make more money, I'll be happier. Got promoted, changed jobs like 2 or 3 times and started to get into some good money for being in my mid-20s. Didn't bring happiness. I was saving more, could afford a nicer car, new apartment, new house. So I finally was like, all right, what do I have to do to like kind of change my path here? Stumbled upon financial freedom and this whole aspect of really time freedom. And I realized what I was after was complete control over how I would spend my time each day for the rest of my life, more so than how much money I could make. Because money is not going to bring you happiness, but it's a tool that if you leverage appropriately can get you more time so you can chase things you're passionate about and have less stress if you do things appropriately. So it's part of the puzzle, not the end goal. So I quickly realized, all right, well, I need to figure out a way to create residual income, whether it's fully passive or partially passive. So my time is not directly tied to it. Typically, all roads lead to real estate, or at least one of the main roads does. So I started to look at all these different ways to get started in real estate. And I started to do the math. And you and I were talking before the show, just kind of about like long-term rentals, getting started there. And it's bigger pockets, $200 a door. I'm like, I just want to make $10,000 a month in cash flow. That's all I want. Well, I'll do the math. I'm like, I need 50 doors. That was so like disheartening and overwhelming at the same time. I was like, that's not that exciting. I get it. It's a great way to build wealth. And eventually you'll own these properties free and clear and you'll be netting like 10, 15 grand a month. Cool. But I want something faster because I can't keep doing this job. I can't keep going on Monday morning sales calls. Like I'm just beating my head into the wall. So discovered short-term rentals and Airbnb and was very intrigued at the opportunity to create a unique experience for guests, provide more amenities, and give them something that they're willing to pay more for than a typical rental. And that got me really excited because I started to crunch the numbers. And at first I just didn't believe it because a single property can cash flow net like thousands of dollars per month. And that like blew me away. So got our first property, finally got up enough courage to do it, sold my truck to have enough to furnish it. Then this is at the end of 2019. And then like never looked back ever since. That property today still cash flows on average like 5,000 to 6,500 a month after all expenses and mortgage. So we're at 7 properties personally. We've kind of scaled up to bigger vacation rentals, if you will, because we're focused on quality over quantity. And those 7 do about 80 to 130,000 a month gross revenue. And we usually net like 40 to 60% of that, depending on the month. So very healthy margins, short-term rentals are. And then over time, I started posting content on social media. I'm like, I learned so much on YouTube and on Instagram and now TikTok. I started just sharing with what I was learning, not really knowing where I was going with it. And I had a bunch of people start reaching, asking for coaching calls. So I started coaching people for free. I was like, this is fun. Then finally people offered to pay for it. And I was like, all right, I got to build something out of this. This is a great opportunity. So I put together a coaching program. And then eventually we had one of my students, their wives was in design. So they started a design company and I partnered with them on that. And then one of my other earlier students started a management company, partnered with him on that. And it's just like a very vertically integrated. And it's really fun seeing businesses grow and basically go from employee to investor, solopreneur to entrepreneur is a kind of a wild seesaw, like crazy ride. But that's kind of where I'm at today, is just focusing on those main businesses and trying to help as many people that are willing to get started and scale in short-term rentals and hit financial freedom.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, obviously you went over a bunch there, so we can kind of dive back into a bunch of that, but the trajectory, and this is what I love about real estate, let's say, right? You kind of touched on that. Like there are different avenues that people can pursue, but usually really the biggest ones that we found, of course, real estate and leveraging, let's say, debt and leveraging opportunities that come along with it, tax benefits and all that kind of stuff. But then also too, like the business side. I mean, those are the things that are that's scalable, right? You want to move quickly. You chose the right vehicles to be able to do it, right? And it's like, okay, highest forms of revenue, let's say from residential real estate, short-term rentals, and the same thing with like the business operations, right? And it's all vertical, right? So for those who may not be familiar, like vertical integration, right? It's like, okay, hey, I need these certain elements along kind of the chain of owning, operating, managing short-term rentals. Let's say even for yourself, even if you self-manage, hey, I've got to manage this thing. Well, hey, if I already have tools, I have systems in place to manage my own properties, I can do it for other people. And obviously you're putting yourself out there through social media, you develop a platform, you develop a presence, right? And hey, you develop, or you understand, hey, there's a need in the marketplace for this. Hey, how can we collaborate to make this work? So you got started. What year did you get started?
Very end of 2019, we bought our first property.
Okay. So yeah, listen to that, guys. So 2019 to now when we're recording this, it's late 23, we'll say. So within 4 years, he was able to develop a portfolio that's generating 80 to, how much did you say on the top end? 100, plus.
Yeah, like 130-ish. I think our best month was this year so far.
That's awesome. So to do that, that's life changing. And the initial goal was 10,000, right? I feel like that's always kind of the magic number for a lot of investors. It's like, 10 grand, it's like, well, how about you blow that out of the water, right? That's almost a 10X, right? So that's amazing. Yeah. Kudos to you, man. That's congratulations on that. It's a wonderful success. And the fact too, you can feel good about, you could help others along the way too, right? Like that's kind of the fulfilling. Not only do you have time freedom, as you were kind of talking about that earlier, right? Like having the flexibility, the money is not the end goal. Really what you'll understand, right? And you already found this. The goal is not the money. It basically buys you more options. What options do I have to go eat with your spouse, or where to send your kids to school, or where you can live, where you can vacation? What do I do with my time? Are you showing up and you're sitting in a cubicle every day, day in, day out? Like you said, it's not like horrible, but man, this is not life-giving either.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No, so that's awesome.
Yeah. I will say one thing that changed my perspective too is you can always work harder, make more money and pay for nicer things, but you're basically trading time to expense your life, when instead trade your time, earn a higher income, but then invest as much of that as possible into assets that produce more monthly income, cash flow. And then if that's no longer tied to your time, so you can have your assets pay for the liabilities or expenses in your life. So I love to think of it as, hey, if I want a nicer car, great, but I need to go first earn the amount of money to buy a property that can then pay for the car or 3 of those cars, instead of just taking that money and just straight up buying the car. Same thing with house, mortgage, whatever, vacations, buy the asset to pay for the liability in life. And then you're building wealth along the way as well.
Now, did you, just to kind of touch on that, right? So like you're like, basically this is a change in mindset, right? From being kind of more of a consumer, just a straight consumer to, hey, I need to produce, right? I need to produce in order to generate enough revenue or whatever for this outcome, right? This income. How important you've had a lot of growth here, like in a relatively short period of time. How important has mindset been to you kind of throughout all this? Like, did you have a family that was very entrepreneurial and, oh yeah, no, I saw that right from the get go and they were hotel operators and all that kind of stuff? Or is it like, no, how important has kind of how has mindset, I guess, factored into your growth and your success so far?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up more along the lines, just I had great support from my parents. Mom's been a nurse forever. Dad was in sales for a long time, management, and now is a financial planner, but not like super entrepreneurial from a young age at myself at all. I kind of had to pivot in, like fell into that almost. But mindset was incredibly important. And my mindset has changed so drastically just in the past 4 years and even in this past 12 months. Once you start getting around different people who share a specific mindset, you start to manifest in it. It's really challenging to get out of your current mindset if you're not around somebody who can open your eyes to it, especially if you're not open to hearing it. A lot of people see others on social media, successful people, and I used to do this too. I'm like, oh, that must be nice. And it's like, dude, that could be you too. I know it sounds so far-fetched, but you have to take step one and then just learn along the way. Like so many doors just open if you're willing to take the time and invest in yourself. I think one of the most important things I've done in this past year is I've invested well over 6 figures into myself and in my businesses, into coaching programs, mentorships. So I'm not someone who just sells a mentorship program, but I actively purchase other people's to help me amplify what I'm doing. And it's just like 10x to everything I've been doing. So this last year alone has been like the most life-changing when it comes to that type of thing and mindset itself. But yeah, you're right. I mean, mindset is incredibly important. You have to have more of an abundance mindset and a limitless mindset to be able to start and scale anything that you're doing.
Yeah, no. And to that point, right? Like like I mentioned a little bit earlier, right? It's like, gosh, you go from being just a straight consumer to like, man, how much value can I bring? Right. Like the marketplace rewards us for the amount of value that's brought to it. Right. And so when you're surrounding yourself with other creators, right? Other value creators, man, it's huge. You develop like this, you get this momentum going, right? And it is a challenge to go from 0 to 100, right? If you're still used to being around people who are just consumers and, hey, well, that must be for other people. That must be great. Must be good to be them. Like, I wish I could do that. And if that's all, if that's your echo chamber and you're around other people who that's the only belief that they have, it's going to be really difficult to get momentum versus just like how you're saying, right? Hey, I'm paying for coaching, right? I'm in a mastermind. I'm in different programs. And some of these, I mean, they're pretty pricey, right? Like if you get into certain groups, it's like, well, hey, the price of admission weeds out a lot of people. And it's like, I used to be kind of similar to you where it's just like, well, or similar to even how we're talking about, I don't want to pay that. Like I can just go read about it. And that's true. There's a lot of information out there that you can read about. But when you're surrounding yourself with other people who are actually doing it, boy, it puts you in a whole different stratosphere.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you've done.
Yeah. I think something that changed my perspective because I used to be in a how much does it cost, a cost savings mindset versus, hey, I'm investing in myself and I can grow exponentially. Like the thing you have to keep in mind is you're not paying just for 6 or 12 months worth of a product or a coaching service. You're paying for the amount of years it took that person to go through all the struggles, the mistakes, and piece everything together so you can learn everything in those 6 months instead of 6 years. So like, what is 6 years worth to you if that's how long it's going to take you, right? And a lot of people, if they can extrapolate that, you're like, oh, okay, this is well worth my money, especially if I pour into it and take advantage of it and be able to apply it to what I want to accomplish. That's just, you have to adopt that mindset and get out of the mindset of like, what is it costing me? What can it help you achieve? You know, some of those pricier ones, like upwards of $50,000 or $100,000, if that helps me take my business from $10K a month to $100K a month, that is well worth $100,000 paid up front. I know it's hard to think about that, but that's the level that I see people at in these different communities and what I found myself in recently. And it's unbelievable. So not to beat a dead horse, but yeah, if you guys are out there listening and you kind of have that mindset, if you want to change and elevate your life, you have to adopt that.
Oh yeah. And like I said, once you're into kind of some of these rooms where people are very successful, and even if they're just a couple of steps from you, right? Like further down the road than you are in terms of whatever business it is that you're trying to pursue. Gosh, I want to learn from the mistakes that they've made too. If they can help me shortcut the bridge, just like you're saying, right? If they can help save me 5 years and however many countless thousands of dollars, or beat my head against the wall because, hey, I've already tried that. Don't do that. Do this. Like that one piece of information can be life altering, right? That can save your marriage, right? Like that can save your relationship with your kids because now, hey, you don't have to spend the time and the money and the energy and the effort to go and try to make that mistake yourself, right? So I cannot stress enough, guys. Go out, get some coaching, get some mentorship, pay for this if you're able to, and you can. Even if you can't, stretch yourself, find a way to be able to do it, right? You pick up a side hustle or sell something or whatever that you're not using or whatever, but do something to help kind of get momentum going. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit now too. So obviously we're talking about social media and what you've been seeing quite a bit for the last stretch now, right? As the market has shifted, hey, a lot of Airbnb bust and yeah, oh, the sky is falling. Like, how are you kind of navigating all those waters? Do you feel like short-term rentals are the way to go? Are you seeing like a big dip in your operations, occupancy? Obviously regulations is a big deal now, right? How is that affecting your business? How are you navigating through that?
Yeah, I think it's market to market. Some markets have become more competitive. Supply has gone up. Give you an example, like one of the tweets that went viral, which was very misleading, by the way, which we can get into in a second, said revenue's down 50% in cities like Phoenix and Austin. Well, revenue is actually up like 45, 50%. If you look at the revenue numbers, the RevPAR or RevPAL, revenue per available rental, was down because supply shot up. And then demand started to subside back to pre-COVID levels after that crazy boom of travel we had in late 2021 and 2022. So my advice to anybody is to look at not just the past 12 months, but look at the trailing like 3 to 5 years of data. You can go on AirDNA or a similar data site and compile all that info and then look at some future trending info as far as daily rates and occupancy and craft your own forecast. But the information is there. There's never been a better time for an individual to get started in short-term rentals because technology and software has basically democratized the industry for any entry-level investor. And I say that because you already know where the top performing properties are in a given market. You know what the data is, both past and future looking. ADRs are, occupancy is, you know what type, like amenities to put in properties. And if you just take advantage of that information and then go replicate, you're going to probably be successful. And then I will say that bad news sells a lot better than good news. So all the doomsdayers out there, like those tweets and those stuff, it's like they get millions and millions of views, whether it has good merit behind it or not. That's what they're after. That's what news outlets are after too, So they're going to talk about all that. Certain cities, yes, they're cracking down on regulation. I tend to stay away from certain large cities like New York City, San Francisco. Like you guys can see the writing on the wall. The very progressive cities that are quick to make change, that have very large populations and they're predominantly run by hotels, you're going to get a lot of pushback from city council and new regulations put in. So I tend to be in more investor-friendly cities or vacation markets that need the tourism, rely on the tourism and the tax revenue generated from that to support the local economy. But regulation and permits is not always a bad thing. And I'll tell you why. Because if you have an area that has regulation, but there's still opportunities for you to invest, like they're still investor-friendly, it relatively suppresses or caps supply. So it kind of puts a ceiling on supply. Whereas if there's no regulation, and you're not on an island where there's only so much land and houses to have, you would have just unlimited supply potentially. And if demand doesn't keep up with it, that's where RevPAR goes down and you might struggle a little bit. So pay attention to those things. All that info's out there for you, but don't buy into one headline. Similarly, you wouldn't buy into a headline if it said, Miami, Florida is the best place ever to invest in real estate. And here are the top 3 reasons why. That's something you'd see on like Yahoo Finance, right? Would you just go buy willy-nilly some random house in Miami over your head, think you're just going to crush it? Probably not. So just make sure you don't like get overwhelmed. Do your due diligence, do your research. But I still think it's a great time and opportunity to get into short-term rentals. You just have to make sure you're looking at the right info.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree with that. And I guess the people too that would scare that off. They're going to be scared away by anything, right? So, and those, just to your point too, right? The headlines are always going to be so negative. And for one, too, guys, like there's no one real estate market, right? Like you'll kind of hear the news outlets and whatnot. It's like, well, the sky's falling, right? Like real estate is done. And it's like, well, there's no one market. Like real estate is like hyper local. Michael's in the North Carolina, right? Or South Carolina, rather. I'm in Hawaii, right? Like our markets are going to be totally different. So, and even within those markets, right? Like there's going to be opportunity. So it's just a matter of diving into your whatever market you're trying to target. Take a look and to see what the regulations are about, or what's there, what's not there, what may be coming. Look up news articles, and there's tons of information out there, so you can kind of help to navigate through some of that and make it a good decision, right? Talk to some other, and this is also the power of, like, let's say the education platforms, let's say like yours, right, or some of the different groups where it's like, hey, do I know anybody else? Is there anybody else in our sphere that's operating in that market? Can you help me? Right? Like, should I invest there? Right? Like, so there's so much information out there to just take one blanket headline statement like that and just say, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, we're done. So no, but very cool. Very cool. Well, and I know you mentioned earlier that you guys are focusing more now. You've gone maybe a little bit more upscale and to some of the different types of properties coming back to a little bit more of the mechanics of your business. Is that something that you learned kind of early on? Let's say, and I've heard this before where it's like, okay, hey, either go budget or go like for premium kind of stays. Like, is that something that you've adopted, or like how are you deciding now what type of properties, let's say, to focus on with your personal portfolio?
Yeah, initially it was the reason we were focusing on larger properties is just because I liked the bigger cash flow for the same amount of work. It takes more to set up the property, more capital, more time. However, once they're launched, managing reservations remotely and a cleaning team and a handyman takes just about the same amount of effort if it's a 5-bedroom property versus if it's a condo. And sometimes it could be more work if it's a condo, like a tiny little thing, because your occupancy is higher, you'll have more bookings throughout the month. So more reservations to manage, more communication with guests. So I found I'd rather manage one property that cash flows $10,000 a month than 10 properties that cash flow $1,000 a month each. The second thing that I've learned in the past 2 years is differentiation is key. And that's in any business. If you're going to compete on price, if any market or industry is growing, supply is growing, competition is increasing, competing on price is always a race to the bottom. And I never want to be in a race to the bottom, especially if prices are going up and my operating costs are going up. You have to have steady or increasing revenue. So I have found if you go all out on your amenities, spend more on design, have better photography, better pricing, better management, you're going to get the higher end guest who's willing to pay the premium, regardless how the economy is doing for the most part. There's always going to be that guest who's willing to pay for the better service, not just the cheapest accommodation, and get the best bang for their buck, if you will. So I'd rather focus on that. And our most recent one we bought in 2023 are by far the most capital intensive, but this property has been averaging like 30 grand a month revenue and netting 60% of that. So it's just insane to think. So I'd rather just do like 5 more of those homes and take my time and be very particular on what I buy than just like try and just scale the portfolio per se and get as many doors as possible. I hate when people say that. I know it's very common in long-term rentals or multifamily. Oh, I have 250 doors. I'm like, what's your cash flow? What's your equity? What's your net worth? Like that, those are the numbers that really matter. And the number of doors doesn't matter necessarily, right? I mean, it's part of the equation.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's easy to get caught up in that. I heard they were talking about, I think about some of that recently, like in bigger pockets and whatnot. It's like, well, it's kind of what was the term that they were using? Basically, it's like a trap, right? It's a mental trap of like, well, I want to focus on the doors. It's like, well, yeah, you've got one door that's generating how much money like every month versus the one guy that's got, how you mentioned earlier, I'm going to need 50 properties in order to generate the same
50
amount of
doors.
cash flow. So it's like, that's 50 water heaters, 50 rooms, freaking work, so, yeah, no, I agree with you there. I actually do think that's a key distinction to make, right? And I think that's a learned lesson too, right? I don't know, from the get-go, you weren't dropping that much cash, let's say, to set up a property and whatnot, right? That's a learned lesson that comes kind of along your investing journey. And again, this is the benefit of having somebody who's more experienced, who's a little further down the road to say, hey, look, what, buy nice. Don't buy it twice, right? Like the common adage.
Don't buy it twice. That's funny.
Yeah. Because that's what ends up happening, right? Like you cheap out on a property or you cheap out on furnishings or whatever, and then you end up having to replace it. It's that much more of a pain to have to go deal with that, or you don't have the right amenities. Okay, well, how much is that going to be to add that later? And how much lost revenue did you have because your bookings are down and there is no point of separation for you and that kind of stuff. So again, guys, this is the kind of stuff that you want to get, that you want to glean from people like Michael and let's say in his coaching program, or getting around other people who are doing the things that you want to do. Right. So kind of to that, tell us a little bit about the coaching program. People want to learn more about kind of that end. Where can they go? How can they learn more about what you've got going on that side of the business?
Yeah. B&B Investor Academy. We've taught over, 1,200 people at this point in time. We've tweaked the program over the past several years. It is probably the most coaching and mentorship intensive short-term rental program in the market. A lot are what I used to offer, which are really more or less just a video course, maybe some support here and there. But now we have a whole bench of coaches and experts like legal professional CPAs, property management coaches, all the whole gamut. And over 30 coaching calls a month. And then you have a client success manager for one-on-one call support. And then all the other resources you get, of course, lifetime access to. But it's been really fun working with people. We don't just focus on buying. So depending on what your goals are when you come in the door, what your budget is, we try and craft a strategy that can help get like the fastest path to get you there. So if your goal is just to like build a little bit of side income and reduce your taxes and you enjoy your job, probably makes sense to buy and be selective. But if yours like I was, and man, I just can't stand my job. I want out. I want to scale cash flow. It's like, all right, well, depending how much money you have, maybe we buy some, we do rental arbitrage, maybe we build a co-host or management business, and we figure out the fastest way to get you to that number. Is it 12 grand a month, 50K a month? So that way you can leave your job and solely focus on scaling your business. But yeah, I would love to work with you. We always have free consults over Zoom just to make sure it's a good fit for us, just as much as it is for you. Just go to bnbinvestoracademy.com. You guys are welcome to learn more there.
Great. And like I said, this is really where it helps to talk to kind of a seasoned investor too, right? Because you may be, hey man, I've stumbled across this Airbnb thing, and it's like, oh, well, some people are saying to go arbitrage, and some people are saying to buy, and some people are, like you say, to go into management. Well, it's like real estate. Like, there's a million and one different ways to make money in real estate. Shiny object syndrome. It's like, well, that sounds great, and that sounds great. Yeah, but what's the best fit for you? What's the best fit to get you to your goals? And the time that you want? How much time do you have? Like, how much capital do you have, right? Like, these are all questions that kind of play into the strategy that you're going to end up pursuing, right? So yeah, I love that you guys, you and your team would help kind of coach them along that journey. Well, at this point in the show where we kind of transition into what we call our fire round, just a little bit more rapid fire questions. That's something you're game for?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
All right on. So first question, what's the best book that you recommend other than Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the real estate?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple good books. I'm not the biggest reader. I will say one that we were talking about mindset earlier, that truthfully, I thought was a very repetitive book, kind of monotonous, but changed my mindset. And I immediately got started in real estate after. And it's kind of a sequel to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's Cashflow Quadrant. Really just talks about the mentality of trading time for money versus having your money or building a business that works hard for you. And you have to transition from the employee or self-employed side of the quadrant over to the business owner or investor. And trust me, I believe I felt the same way many of you are listening. Like it's hard to fathom what that looks like on that side of the quadrant, but you can figure out a way to make the transition. And it is the most liberating thing ever. So like that book is great if you guys are looking for a mindset change or just a different way to think about that. And also like how you perceive risk in life. It's far more risky to risk the next 45 years of your life working that job that you may not care about. What are you going to regret on your deathbed? You're not taking a shot, losing some money and investment here or there. So if you guys want a good perspective change, that's a good book.
Yeah, no, it is a great book. And that's even good for a refresher. So even if you've visited it before or you've looked over it before, take a dive in there. That holds true for a lot of different books. It's like you can revisit them time and time again. You're at a different stage now, I'm sure, reading that book than you were when you first glanced over it. So yeah, no, excellent book recommendation. All right, next question. What is your superpower?
I really like putting a smile on people's faces. I'm usually pretty good at kind of keeping anything light, if you will. So I could be making my wife laugh, my daughter, anybody, we're in a serious conversation. I just love putting a smile on people's faces, and I'm usually pretty good at it, whether they're laughing at me or with me, one or the other.
Yeah, no, it's powerful. That's what you got to do. People want to be around the people who make them smile, right? Or make them laugh. So yeah, if you don't want to be the guy that walks in the room, they're like, yeah. All right, next question. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned over your career thus far?
Honestly, the biggest lesson is investing in yourself is the most powerful thing that you can do. And it's also the most daunting because you always think like, where else could I be spending this money? This could pay for my car. This could pay for my mortgage. This could pay for my next vacation. This could buy me some real estate. But it's just the abundance mindset and limitless mindset. Like investing in yourself is the biggest lesson for me. And I was too nervous to invest in programs when I first started, and I kicked myself because I'd be way further along now, which is crazy to even think if I did that sooner rather than later.
Yep. No, for sure. Yep. That's absolutely true. All right. And for the busy working professional who's working towards trying to achieve financial freedom, what advice would you have for them?
Like if it's that big of a priority, you're not that busy. I get it if you're in the OR 7 days a week for 12 straight hours a day, but you're not. If you could find, let's be honest, if you can find 5 to 10 hours a week, if you really want something. So it's either not a big enough priority in your life to dedicate the extra downtime that you do have, and I know you have it, or scrap an extra hour of sleep each night just for a little bit of few months to learn something new and implement. You have to make it a priority.
That's a great way that I've always looked at it. It's like, wow, if Elon Musk and I have the same amount of days or same amount of hours in a day, and that guy is a billionaire and runs like multiple uber successful companies, like what excuse do I have? Right. Like I will say, kind of to your point there, the one easy thing to get started with that, and this was a game changer for us, get rid of your TV. Like I don't have a TV. And so like, I think most people would be surprised. This could be going now, it's probably laptops and like cell phones and stuff like that too. But I think most people would be surprised how much time you spend, like waste, watching Netflix or Disney Plus or Hulu or wherever.
Hmm.
That's a lot of time in your day, in your week. And it's like, okay, what could I be doing with that time? Right. So
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Hold yourself as accountable as you would hold somebody else accountable. Like if your goals and your dreams were dependent on somebody else and you saw them on their phone, if you look at their screen time and it was 8 hours, 6 dedicated to social media, 2 to Netflix, you would hold them accountable. So like you have to, you're right. You have to hold yourself accountable. And screen time, like I spend too much time on my phone or even watching TV some is in my downtime. And I know I could be doing more. So you're exactly right. Yeah. Pay attention to that, hold yourself accountable, and you'd probably be surprised at how much extra time you actually have.
For sure. Well, I know you mentioned the Airbnb Academy. Where else can, if our audience, listeners, they want to reach out to you, maybe they want to follow you on social, or what's the best place for them to kind of go and so they can connect with you a little bit better?
Yeah, anything and everything that I do or I'm involved in all my businesses can be found on really any social media, but Instagram's the best place to connect. I'm very responsive to every single DM that comes through the door. So yeah, it's just Elefante6, and just make sure it's the one with the little blue verified check mark because there's a lot of bots sadly these days. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. I love hearing from people out there and hearing your goals, and maybe there's a way that we could work together.
Awesome. Michael, well, thanks so much for jumping on the show with us today. I know I enjoyed our time together. You made me smile. So hopefully we got the listeners too as well. And they picked up some valid takeaways and some good points. So, but thanks again. And we'll look forward to hearing from you soon.
Awesome, Steve. Thanks.
Oh, great show with Michael Elefante with B&B Investing. Yeah, great show. Lots of gems to take away from that. Really incredible how quickly he's able to scale his portfolio. Well, not only portfolio, but also just general operations. Obviously, they did acquisition of management companies to help operate and also design to help set up new units. And then of course, operate them after the fact. But being able to go from an initial goal of $10,000 a month to making 80 to upwards of $130,000 of revenue a month. Obviously it's not all profit, but gosh, you guys, like that's more than people will typically make in a year, right? And a lot of people. So this is how quickly and how you can scale up. This is the opportunity that's available if you're willing to step out, take advantage of doing some research, getting around other people who are doing it. This is one of the reasons that we've set up networking events and whatnot, and we join courses and are always trying to get better because there's so much opportunity out there for you guys. But well, guys, that's going to be it for me today. Of course, if you guys want to connect with us locally, if you want to come out and meet us, if you're here on Oahu, if you live in Oahu or you're visiting, make plans to come and join us for our monthly meetup. So you can go to our Facebook group to learn more about that. That's our Honolulu Multifamily and More is our group. So we meet up every month here locally. So I'd love to shake your hand, come out and do some networking and put a face in the name. Of course, if you guys are finding value in the podcast, please subscribe. If you guys are not subscribed yet, subscribe to the show so you make sure when you get notified when all of the new episodes come out. Of course, share the podcast, and we'd love a 5-star review if you guys are finding value in it. If you don't like it, that's totally fine too. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we can improve. We're always trying to get better. And again, if you guys want to hear from certain business segments, whether it be in real estate or any other business, let us know. We'd love to kind of seek out some guests that are operating in that space if it's something that's worthwhile to look into. All right, guys, we're going to sign off for today and go out, take some action, and we'll talk to you soon. Aloha.